Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Gay with God podcast, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Or are we still searching? The stories you hear on this podcast will melt your heart and strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with the God of your understanding. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gay with God podcast. I am Midge Noble, and today I'm finally getting to upload for you the taping that I did at the WILD Goose Festival in July, interviewing Reverend Gayle Tabor. She is recently confirmed in the United Methodist Church, and I'm so excited to bring you her story. We did not read her bio at the festival. Gayle introduced herself, which made it so much cooler, but I did want to read it for you so that you know everything she is to our community. So enjoy the show. Reverend Gayle Tabor is a passionate elder in the United Methodist Church. As a church planter, Gayle is currently establishing a new faith community, SALT, Inclusive Methodist Community in Wilmington, North Carolina. After a successful career as a paralegal and marketing professional, Gayle earned an MDiv, that's a Master of Divinity, later in life, showing that it's never too late to follow your calling. An award-winning evangelist, Gayle was honored with the Harry Denman Evangelism Award by the North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church in 2022. When not immersed in ministry, you'll find Gayle cheering for the Chicago Cubs, building intricate Lego creations, rescuing Dalmatians, advocating for sea turtles, or hitting the road on a bike or the waterways on a kayak. All right, welcome everybody to the Gay with God podcast. I'm excited that you're here. You're welcome to stay. Bring your friends. When we decide to go live in just a minute, we're probably already live. But don't forget to make some noise for Charles and his beautiful wife, Gayle. Yeah. Holding down the goose tent. Yep. So I'm so excited to have this guest with me. And if you follow the show, you know that I'm all about honoring the coming out faith journey stories of my guests. And then when I don't have a guest, I go rogue. Today, I will be somewhat sane, but we may go rogue because I heard her speak earlier, and we don't know what's going to happen. Never. So I'm not going to use up her time. I'm going to let Gayle introduce herself, and then she's going to tell us her story, and I'm going to jump in, and we'll have questions at the end. All right, Gayle, introduce yourself, and let's get started.
Hey y'all, I'm Gayle Tabor, and I am an ordained pastor in the United Methodist Church, newly ordained, and so thank you. It's been about 3 weeks, and I'm still settling into what that feels like. So it's my coming out story, like my beginning of life and whatever. I grew up in an evangelical church, so I grew up in a very conservative Christian environment. And sometime around the time I was starting to have thoughts or memories, I knew I was different. I knew that I was not like all the other kids. I was not like everyone else. And so I didn't have language around that because I grew up in an evangelical world where language that would describe who I was in any positive kind of way did not exist in my world. And so my way of saying who I was and how I thought my life would go was, I'm never getting married and I'm never having children. Because those things equated to me to a different life than what I could see around me. Mm-hmm. And I grew up heavily steeped in the evangelical church. My parents, they built a house in literally the shadow of the church. You could walk to church, and we were there every time the doors were open. My mom likes to say that I was born on a Saturday. I missed that following Sunday the next day. I did not miss another Sunday until I got chicken pox at 13.
Wow.
And so that was a track record, right? That I did not miss Sunday school or church for the first 13 years of my life.
Wow.
And I dare say I didn't miss a Wednesday night in that as well. So I grew up heavily steeped in this culture of church and church, evangelical church.
Mm-hmm. And I can hear that because my grandfather was a minister, my uncle was a minister. I was told earlier that I probably did know people who were gay back then, but I didn't know that they were gay and never had language for that. And coming out of that indoctrination, how much did hell play a part in it for you that debilitated you on whatever level as a kid?
So as a child, I would lay awake at night worried that I was going to hell. I didn't know why I was going to hell, but I knew I was.
Yep.
And I knew that there was nothing I could do to fight against it in a lot of ways. Like this was just going to be my path, that hell was coming, and all I could do was just kind of like try my best to stave it off for as long as I could.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the crux of it all, that people don't understand with, gay liberation and gay rights, and we can get married, but yet that fear I didn't come out until I was 30. And it was because of the hell thing. It was because of hellfire and brimstone. And I was scared to death. And that doesn't just go away. Just because all of a sudden they start to say, oh, gay people are better than they were. Well, they might be, but we live in fear every day of that going away. Because what's on the chopping block now besides Social Security and our democracy? It's gay marriage, once again. So somebody comes in the office, we get it. Somebody comes in the office, we lose it. So it's not stable. It's not stable. And I think that affects our faith in a lot of ways.
I think it affects all the things of life, right?
Yes.
It affects health. It affects faith. It affects just how you walk through the world is affected by this in so many ways.
It really is. So talk about how you moved past that. How did you get from all of that indoctrination and going to church every blessed day? No, Sunday. How did you evolve through that?
So I went away to college, and I went to a church-based school, a very conservative school, and lo and behold, there are women there. And it was pretty phenomenal to discover this, right? There's no parental supervision. You're just kind of on your own. And, oh, my gosh, there are people there that, think maybe they like me and maybe I like them. And all of a sudden, things just kind of evolved into something that was very scandalous and dirty and oh my gosh, what is happening here? And yet here we are. And so that went on for 2-3 years of college, and then it's you're out of college, you're moving back into real life, and it was okay. Well, I can live this celibate life. I can turn this off. I cannot be I can just go back into this faith community kind of thing, and I can turn this off. And if you know anything about human sexuality, you know that that's not a real thing. It's not. No matter how much your brain may say that you can do that, you really can't. And I mean, just to kind of throw into that's a part of the problem with priests in the Catholic Church, right? Is that they've asked them to turn off this full part of themselves that God created in all of us, their sexuality, this part of themselves that is innate in us, to make connection with each other and to make connections in not just mental and spiritual ways, but also to make physical connection with other people. And so, that just doesn't work. And all props to Paul for saying we should try that if we can, but the reality is we can't. And so there was a process of coming out through that, and through that process I completely left the church altogether.
Yeah.
So the church is not a place for me. Me and God, gay with God, right? So me and God, we're good. We've been good all the time. Even though there was the fear that was put into me about what might happen around God, I was still good with God, and God was still good with me. And I just couldn't deal with church. And so Fast forward a few years, I met someone who happened to be the daughter of a Baptist preacher.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, how weird is that? And so you have these two conservative kids that grew up in this very conservative place, and you throw them together, and lo and behold, one of them, not me, says, I think we should go to church. And I'm like, we should go where? And why? Why would we do that? But as you do in new relationships, right, you start to give in and you go. And so we tried a lot of different churches. We tried the MCC church. We tried the Episcopal church. We tried a Methodist church. We tried a Baptist church. We tried a lot of different places. At varying times, we almost touched on community, but never quite. The longest stint that we had was at a Baptist church. Kind of funny story. So we live in kind of a redneck neighborhood in the South, and in our mailbox one day, here's this little note that says, we're starting a Bible study in the neighborhood. Please come. And we're like, oh, cool. This will be fun. So we grabbed our Bibles because we're both good Bible college kids, right? So we went to Bible college. We know how to do this. And so off we go with our Bibles to this Bible study. And these two old people in the neighborhood had no idea what to do with the lesbians who showed up. And not only that, they had no idea what to do with the lesbians who showed up, who knew the Bible and who actually could challenge them and speak intelligently and know what they were talking about. And they had no idea what to do with that. And so the second week that we showed up, they brought their pastor.
Uh-oh.
Because they were outclassed when we showed up with our Bibles. And turns out we really liked the pastor. He was a great guy. We enjoyed conversation with him. We talked to him about coming to his church. He said, yes, please come. You will be welcome. It will be fine, blah, blah, blah. And he was great through the whole thing. We attended there for a little over a year. Then one Sunday he wasn't there. And the guest preacher that day preached on letting sin come and sit in your pews.
Uh-oh.
And the abomination that was among you. And how you needed to rid your church of this abomination, and they needed to go, and they needed to be out of this church because they were dragging all of you down, and you needed to get rid of this sin that was sitting among you. And at the end of his sermon, he offered up an altar call, as is common in a Baptist church. And he said, if you agree and you want this abomination out of your church, come down to the front. And we sat there as the whole church got up and walked to the front.
Aww.
So sitting in the pew were Jen and I, and two people who happened to be visiting that Sunday and had no idea what the hell was going on. So they were just like, what have we walked into? This is crazy town. And needless to say, we never went back. And that was the end of it. We did run into the pastor in a Home Depot one day, and he apologized all over himself for that happening to us. But, what could he do? I mean, what had happened, and there's no going back from that. And at that point in time, I basically laid down the law and said, no more church. We're done. This is it. We've tried them all. We don't fit anywhere. Our theology is a little too conservative for the liberal places that would accept us, and the conservative places that our theology fits a little better don't fit us, and so we're just done. So we live at the beach, so we went on Sunday mornings to what we called Church of the Seagull, which meant we took our four-wheel drive Jeep out on the beach, and we enjoyed some beach time with our dogs and enjoyed the seagulls and came home. A few years later, we forged a friendship with a couple that attended a small United Methodist Church in Carolina Beach, North Carolina, which, if you don't know, was known for years as the Redneck Riviera. So it should tell you the kind of place that this is. And we became friends with them. They attended the church there, and he sang in the choir. And one Easter, he was like, we're having an Easter cantata, please come and hear me sing. And I'm like, I don't want to. He was like, no. It's a fun place. They're welcoming people. Please come and listen to me sing in the choir this Easter cantata. And so we went. This is a one-off, right? We're going to go to an Easter cantata, and then we're done. A gentleman that we had met who was kind of annoying, but when the service was over, he said, we're having a traditional Armenian Easter meal at our house. Please come. And he gave us the address, and so we went. And we met the pastor who was there, talked to him about all the things. We are a lesbian couple. We are gay. This is who we are. We're not going to change. And he was like, I think come to church anyway. It'll be fine. And we're like, yeah, we've heard that before. And so we didn't go. Flat out, we did not go back. Until July came, and we got a card in the mail from this man who had invited us to his house that said, we're having a 4th of July party, please come. And so we went to the 4th of July party, and when we walked into the house, there stood the pastor, and he said, I haven't seen you at church in a while.
Wow.
And I'm like, really? Really, dude? You're a formal Navy dude. Like, you're not an idiot. You get this. Like, are we really going to be welcome at this church? And he said, yes, come. These are very welcoming people. You will be safe here. And so we started just kind of dipping our toe in. And lo and behold, they were very kind and loving people, and we really liked them. He retired. There was an interim pastor that came for a while, and then we got a pastor who was new, and he announced one Sunday that the possibility of lay speaking and taking some lay speaking classes. And if you wanted to sign up for lay speaking classes, or if you wanted to have a conversation with him about that, just email him and let him know, and he'd have a conversation with you about doing lay speaking. And so I was like, sounds like something I might like to do. And so I emailed him and said, hey, I think I'd like to take those lay speaking classes, but I want to talk to you about it. And so we sat down for coffee, and I said, I think I would like to do these lay speaking classes, but if you're never going to let me speak, I see no reason to take the classes.
Right.
So if I'm just going to be made silent in the church, I see no reason. And he kind of got this pensive look, and he and I are like best buds now, and so he has this little look that he gets on his face when he's thinking, and he got that look. It might be the first time I ever saw it, but he got that look, and he was like, because you're a woman? And I'm like, no, because Jen's a woman. Like, is this the reason you're not going to let me speak? And again, he got this very thoughtful look, and he said, well, we'll give it a try, and if we go down, we'll go down together.
Wow.
And I took the classes, and I preached my first sermon 10 years ago, by the way. And turns out I have a little talent for it. And one thing led to another. We've done seminary and, fast forward to ordination. The funny part of this story to me is that when I said to Sean years later, I was in seminary and I said this to him, I'm like, the words that you said to me, if we go down, we'll go down together. I have held on to those words like a life raft through this whole process.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and went, what? What? And I'm like, those words, if we go down, we'll go down together. He was like, I said that?
Uh-oh.
I'm like, yes, you said that, and I have held on to it like a life raft through this whole thing, that is going to be something that, you are in this with me the whole way. And he has been, but he doesn't remember telling me that at the beginning.
He would be really surprised if y'all had gone down. He would like, what happened? Why am I being fired? What's
maybe,
going on?
but that kind of, that person who says, I gotcha.
Yep.
Gave me, and there's so many places where he plugs into this story, from finding a seminary for me to go to that fit all of my criteria that I thought was beyond finding. So like all of these things, like he really has walked with me through this whole journey.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you kind of glossed over this "and I got ordained" part. That was huge. How many years did you work on this?
So realistically, it did not take me any longer to get ordained than the average person being ordained in the United Methodist Church. So If you're United Methodist, you get that. Like, that is a very long process that takes for freaking ever, that requires many, many pages of writing, many, many interviews, many, like, tests, and, I mean, all the things. If you are a United Methodist pastor, you have been through the ringer before you ever get to wear that stole. So, I mean, that's just the deal. So, realistically, I went through without a hitch. However, I had to do it in kind of a crazy way because I'm in the North Carolina Conference, and because the North Carolina Conference is who they are, and because of the way the Book of Discipline read at that time, I went through the safe harbor process in the Pacific Northwest. And so even though I live in North Carolina, and even though I'm at a church in North Carolina, I went to the Pacific Northwest, and I moved my church membership there, went through their district committee on ordination, through their board of ordained ministry, so that through that whole process, just to show the monkey wrench that can happen even when you're going through the process I'm going to say it was relatively smooth, the process itself. But I was commissioned 2 years ago, which gives me basically all the rights of being an elder, except you're doing your residency. So you do 2 years of residency before you can be ordained. And when I was commissioned, I was planting a church, but the North Carolina Conference said, well, at first they said, yes, we will appoint you to this church. And then they came back and said, churches are disaffiliating, and we can't have this be a reason for them to disaffiliate, that we have a gay pastor. And so we're going to make you take a leave of absence. So even though they were paying me, and even though I was doing the work of planting a church, I was officially on a leave of absence from my job that I was doing very hard, working at every day, which could have set me back time in being ordained, because my residency wouldn't be complete. But because I was doing the work, the Pacific Northwest was like, you're caught in a political jumble, and so we will grant you the time that you're actually doing the work, and not the time that you're so in all things, the Pacific Northwest was wonderful to work with me, to cover over the things that were being done that were harmful in other conferences.
So part of it was because you were gay, even though they were kind of letting you ride through it in one respect. But if you had been not gay, that never would have happened.
So there would have been no issue. I would have gone through
Right.
North Carolina without issue.
Well, North Carolina has some issues.
Well, you know.
Just a few.
I do love the state, y'all, so I'm just going to say that straight up. But I would have just gone through the ordination process in North Carolina because of who I am, because of, I mean, Jen and I have been together 27 years. I mean, this is not a new relationship. This is not something that I can sweep under the rug. I mean, it's not like I can pretend that Jen doesn't exist anymore, right? Like, I mean, she's just there. And I didn't mean that the way that
I was going to say, I heard that. Please don't let her have heard any more. Now there's a whole backstory behind that, and I don't think it's appropriate to go to it now, but, you know.
Let me just say, it's been 27 years. If she's not accustomed to this by now, then she's not going to get there. So I mean, there's no hiding who I am to go through the process in North Carolina. And so the bishop that was in office when I began the process, Bishop Hope Morgan Ward, helped make the connections to the Pacific Northwest for me to be able to go through this process there. The Pacific Northwest Conference announced, and they have held to this, that they would be a safe place for people whose credentials were in danger of being messed up or taken away in 2019 when the church took a hard right. They agreed to keep anyone's credentials safe if they wanted to transfer in, so they have done that. And they also have agreed to ordain people who need that safe place to be able to be ordained.
Awesome.
I am the first who went through who wanted to be ordained and not move to the Pacific Northwest. So I am the first who said, I want to be ordained in the Pacific Northwest, but I still want to try to work at home. And so I see myself in a lot of ways as a missionary to my own conference, that this is the place where I hope progressive Christianity will grow, and this is a place where I hope that we can become a church that is truly affirming and really being who we say we are from the start, right? I mean, how many years has the United Methodist Church said open doors, open hearts, open minds, and been none of those things? And now, I mean, even in our ad that is in the book, it says, yes, really. You know, open hearts, open doors, open minds, yes, really. Because now we have the possibility of being a yes, really.
I really hope so.
So I do want to know more about your church. And I want to, because I just love, I've followed you for a while and I've watched it blossom. And so talk to them about your church.
So the church that I'm planting is SALT, Inclusive Methodist Community. We're in Wilmington, North Carolina. And we've been meeting together for about a year now. Our focus of our church is creation care, which we define as all that God has created, including us. And so how do we care for all of those things? How do we care for all that God has created, including us? What I found is that a lot of the people who come to my church are gay adjacent. That's my term for it, which means that they have a family member or they have someone that they love dearly who is gay. They themselves are not. But the thing that I hear a lot is I want to go to a church that if my family member or my friend or whoever ever decided that they were willing to try church again, I want to be going to a church where I could bring them and they would be okay.
Oh.
And so so what we're trying to build is that community where if your friend, child, aunt, uncle, whoever they are, if they ever decided they were willing to give God a try again, that we would be an okay place for them to come. And recognizing fully that it's impossible to create safe spaces because you don't know who shows up, right? Churches can never be safe spaces because we don't know who's going to show up and we don't know what that person is going to say. And sometimes all of us, you know, some stupid shit flies out of your mouth and you're like, oh, I wish I could suck that back, but I can't because I said something stupid. And so that makes it not a safe space because that might be wrong. But we talk about being a brave space where we can all go into this together and we can all be brave together and try to hold and uphold each other. And if you think that sounds familiar to you, it comes from Brene Brown, who talks about we can't make safe spaces. We can only make brave spaces.
I love that. I love that. We want to give you guys a chance to weigh in on this. The other thought that I had that I didn't ask was about, and maybe we can talk about that and you guys can give us your opinion. We've talked a lot in different places here this year at the Goose about knocking the churches down and letting them go. And I'm just wondering about, I've been through religious trauma. It was horrendous for me to come out. I almost didn't make it. If I hadn't been welcomed back to a church, I wouldn't be here. And I don't want that for other people. The whole reason that I started this podcast was that if one person needed to know you can be gay with God and that God loved you, has always loved you, and will not leave you, I don't know if we can do that without a place to go to. Now, it could be the beach. I'm not opposed to the beach. I'm not opposed to having different types of churches. But for me to reclaim my faith that I felt was stolen from me, I had to go back to where it was. I had to go back to a building. I had to reclaim the word God. I wouldn't even use the word. It was an abomination word to me. But when I could reclaim, that's why I name everything Gay with God. It's my memoir, it's my podcast, it's my business. I am my brand. But I wanted to reclaim that word because they had no right to take that from me. And they... Yes. Amen. Preach it, Midge. I'm in the lay preaching initiative. I am for real. So who knows where I'll show up next. But I wondered how you felt about that, about do we still need organized churches to welcome people?
I think the answer to that is a resounding yes. I think that we are built for community, and a community holds us not just accountable, and I think that too much of the evangelical church focuses on how we're holding each other accountable, but it also brings us into this place of love, right? Mm-hmm. And I've said many times, like in the hard spots of my life, who are the people who came alongside me? You know, and if you don't have a community that walks alongside you when you lose a parent, if you don't have a community that walks alongside you when you're going through health scares,
Right.
if you don't have a community, and that community can be a church, or it could be just, you know, your family of choice that has
Right.
but those are the people who are around you who do that. And I think that that's what church, when church is healthy, and I really like Enneagram, and the Enneagram talks about when people are healthy, this is how they act, and when they're unhealthy, this is how they act. And when churches are unhealthy, they're acting a certain way, and it's bullshit, and nobody needs to be there, right? But when they're healthy, they're acting in a totally different way.
Right.
And when churches are healthy, then they are that community for each other, and they are
Right.
the people who love each other and care for each other and show up for each other and do all of those things that we really need to keep us alive as humans.
Right. So we're probably going down to about a minute. Does anyone have a burning question or a comment that you'd like to make? Yes, sir. Come up to the microphone.
North Carolina, or that the Book of Discipline has changed. How is the North Carolina Conference now, or if a gay person goes through ordination in the North Carolina Conference, how would that be now with the change in the Book of Discipline and such?
So the North Carolina Conference has indeed ordained their first gay person. So that has actually happened, and there are a couple of other people who are in candidacy. So I mean, they're in the process. So a couple I think that were commissioned this past year. I know one for sure. And so they're in the process of moving toward being more inclusive, but unfortunately those things are very slow in happening. And I mean, like anything else, changing hearts and minds is a very slow process. And we make great strides, and then sometimes it feels like there's, you know, like what's the saying? 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
Yeah.
You know, but you still progress, right? And so we're making progress in that way. And I get asked all the time, like, when will you come back to the North Carolina Conference? And I don't know the answer to that. I heard just a couple of days ago that the North Carolina Conference is now taking people who want to transfer back in. And so that maybe that door is open to me. I don't know. I right now feel such love and appreciation to the Pacific Northwest Conference that I'm not ready to leave them yet and leave the love and care that I received there.
Right.
And roll the dice for somewhere else. So that's where I am, just on a personal side, is that I was so well cared for and loved through the whole process in the Pacific Northwest. It will be hard for me to leave them right now.
Yeah. So apparently I did midge math a little bit ago, and so we do have plenty of time for some more questions or comments. So it's a special skill of mine to mess
I've
up
heard that
numbers.
she can even do that bad math with a calculator.
I can. I can get, yes, I can get things wrong with a calculator, and I'm really proud of myself that I've stayed committed to that wrongness. I don't give it up just because I'm embarrassed. Any other questions or comments? Yes, come on up to the mic.
Hi, Gayle. Thank you for sharing your story.
Hey, Jill.
You kind of skirted around it, but the Board of Ordained Ministry makes you articulate your call story.
Yes.
So I don't know how long that is, but if you can condense it and just let us know how you knew you were called to be a pastor.
Excellent question.
I did skirt around that. You're right. So 2014, 15, sometime around in there, I had preached several sermons. Got some really good feedback that people really appreciated my sermons, and a lot of people were saying to me, hey, you should go to seminary, hey, you should do this. And I was very much in the resounding no. And just full disclosure, I am currently 61 years old, so I mean in 2016 I was no spring chicken. And not only were people saying this to me, but God was waking me up every night around 4 a.m. to say this to me, because evidently I pay better attention at 4 a.m. than I do other times. But God was very consistent at waking me up at 4 a.m. to tell me this, and I was very consistent at saying no. And so Mother's Day 2016, I preached at St. Paul's in Carolina Beach, the Mother's Day sermon. And I got in my truck, and I was driving to Winston-Salem, where my mom lives, for Mother's Day. And the whole way, I was arguing with God. With the radio off, of course, because you can't argue with the radio on. And so we're arguing all the way, and somewhere around Chapel Hill, and I don't really like Chapel Hill, and so this kind of fits with, that part of my life, but somewhere around Chapel Hill, because my argument to God was there's no path forward. Like, you're asking me to go to seminary, you're asking me to waste all this money and this time, and there's no path forward for me to do anything with this. So this is just stupid that you're asking me. And somewhere around Chapel Hill, God very clearly said to me, and you can believe that God speaks or doesn't, but here's the thing. God very clearly said, the path is not your part.
Ooh.
Your part is to do what I tell you to do. And the path is my problem. And so, being the obnoxious child that I am, I was just like, fine, I'll show you. I'll apply to seminary. I've seen my undergrad grads, the grades that I got. I know that I was a very bad student. They'll never let me in. But I'll apply, and you'll find out that this is not going to happen. And besides that, I have no money, and there's no way I'm going to pay for this, so that's not going to happen either. But I was true to my word. I put in my application. I did all the things, and lo and behold, they accepted me. And lo and behold, we made it through 5 very, very hard years of not quite being a full-time student. I'm not a very good student. And so hitting those marks was very hard for me. Trying to read all of that was very hard. There were so many times that I'm just like, I am done. There's no way that I'm moving forward in this because I can't get it together. And every time, lo and behold, it always miraculously worked itself out. And so, and then, it was like, well, now what, right? But this path opened up in the Pacific Northwest, and so it's been a very interesting journey where Jen is a teacher, so we're living off of a teacher's salary, and how do we have enough money to do the things that we need to do, and what's the next step? And every time we get to the point of I have no idea what the next step is, and I don't see where that's going. And I'm like, obviously, we've come to the end of the road of this stupid journey, right? And nope, there's the next step. It just reveals itself. And so all of the things have just opened up along the way in God's time. And no matter how many times I say this isn't going to work out, it just keeps working out.
Beautiful. Sure. Beautiful. Any other questions or comments? Stories? You got your own story? Start a podcast? It's really easy with Charles sitting over there. It's really great. Okay. Yes, come on up.
What's one thing you would say it was a word of encouragement to someone who might be nurturing a call and is queer?
Yeah. So I think that trusting that God's going to give you the answers, and that's a really hard thing to do, because we are taught as in our human world today to believe all of the negative and let go of all the positive, and we are taught to almost have imposter syndrome, that anything we're called to isn't real. And I think that it takes a lot of courage to say, yes, I heard God say that, and yes, God was serious about it. And so that would be my advice, is that trust that when God calls you, God means it, because God's not going to give up on you if God's calling you. It will be a much more arduous journey if you keep fighting it. And so when you give into it, it will be easier. It won't be easy, but it will be easier. The other thing is back to the sense of community, is surround yourself with those people who believe in you, who are going to push you when you need to be pushed and coddle you when you need to be coddled, and find those people who know you well enough to know when that is. because that is, 90% of my seminary education should go to Jen for knowing when to coddle and say, it's time for you to take a break, and to know when to say, get off your ass and do what you need to do.
Yeah, way to go, Jen.
No.
You don't wake up at 4 o'clock.
Once I said yes, I stopped waking up at 4 a.m. I occasionally, God will wake me up at 4 now, but it's usually for something very specific. But that particular thing has been gone.
That's a good question. Thank you for answering that. Any other questions or comments? Gayle, thank you.
Thanks, Mitch.
So much. I really appreciated you, and I've loved your story, and I followed it, and I just when you finally got that orange stole around your neck, I was celebrating and screaming at the Facebook. I was very excited, so applaud to her for getting that orange stole. And this is a quick story that you can tell about the orange stole, because it was supposed to be what color?
It was supposed to be red. So when they ordain you with the red stole, and but they sent out an email that said, we will gift you a red stole, but if you have a special stole that you would like to use, we will honor that as long as it is red. And I said, well, it's kind of red, but it's really more orange because, well, I really like orange. And the answer came back and said, we would prefer that you be ordained with something that will be very meaningful to you and something that you will wear and use throughout your ministry. And so absolutely we will use your orange stole. And so
apparently
yeah.
She has them wrapped around her little finger. So
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, come on up to the mic, sweetie. We can't hear you, and when I send this up to my podcast people, they're going to go, well, who said what? There's all this silence there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the research for this, don't mind me. But do you guys know how this manifests itself in Black faith communities, as far as like coming into ministry, and because unfortunately churches are still very segregated, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would imagine, I don't know if there's any differences or if it's kind of like a universal journey as far as Black faith communities.
That's an excellent question, and I don't have an answer for that.
So I don't have a specific answer for Black communities, but I think that a lot of ordination process, of call to ministry, is very denominationally driven. And so I think part of that will depend on the denomination that you are attending or where you want to be ordained, which may or may not be what you're attending. So I mean, if you felt a call to something that was Wesleyan and United Methodist, I mean, I could help you with how that process would go. There are a lot of Black United Methodist pastors, and so certainly could put you in touch with some Black United Methodist pastors who could help you with that. So I think that a lot of that is still not denominationally driven, and so where you find your place in a church matters. And a lot of people said to me, well, why didn't you just go UCC, or why didn't you go to the MCC, or why didn't you go to a different church? And I'm like, because where I found my place was in the United Methodist Church.
Right.
And because that's where I found my place, that's where I want to be. And if I had found my place somewhere else, then that's where I would be more happy to be. But that's not where I found my place. I found my place here. And as far as answering your call, I think that's between you and God. And when you and God get to the point where you're like, how do I do this? If that's what God wants for you, that path will open up for you.
Where's a good place for people to connect with you?
So you can connect with me online on Facebook and Instagram. I am Pub Pastor, and so you can find me as Pub Pastor, and so you can connect with me that way. And I also have a podcast that is called Unbound Love, so it's unbound.love.
Awesome. So if you want to connect with me, I'm also on Facebook. You can go to gaywithgod.com because, everything is gay with God. And then you can find all of my social media. I also on Facebook do a Gay with God the podcast, but I also have a group, and in that group we do a faith journey once a month on Zoom, so anybody across the country can join. And we talk about our faith journeys. You don't have to be gay to do it. You can still, be a part of that if you'd like to. And we love lots of voices. And after this, at 4 o'clock, I'll be up at the bookstore. I'll be signing my memoir. Guess what it's called? Gay with God, Reclaiming My Faith, Honoring My Story. They always say as a preacher that you need to have a hook, so that people remember the sermon. So this sermon today has been from Pub Pastor and Gay with God. So anyway, if you are listening, this is a closing thing for the folks that are going to hear it later, but if you are listening to this podcast and are questioning whether you can be gay and be in a relationship with the God of your understanding, if you identify as LGBTQIA+, or not even sure if you're gay, God has always been within you, even when you didn't know it. You have always been gay with God. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you guys for listening and subscribing and sharing. I appreciate Gayle. I appreciate everything she is to our community, and to all who love her and support her SALT church planting ministry. To find Gayle's information and to get her links, please go to the show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com. That's where you can find her show page notes. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can find my contact information. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to see how you can join the Gay with God community. And as always, you are loved. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger. Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.